They do have to complete at least 150 hours per the semester or 100 hours per the quarter with a community organization. And CSAC actually has a list of service organizations they have available on their website. This includes all campuses also could qualify as a service organization. So different departments on your campus, including your Dream Resource Center or financial aid, for example, can take in DSIG volunteers. And those who are not listed on this list currently can actually do this service organization registration form in order to join the list, so other students can see that this organization can also take them as a DSIG volunteer. The process to apply for students is they do have to do this grant application that I believe opened in July of this year and is pretty much open through the academic year, that they can submit anytime, but they do need to complete the service hours during this academic year. And in order to receive the payment after they've completed all of their hours, they need to submit a payment request form in order to receive their payment. And there were a couple of important amendments to DSIG this year, thankfully. There was, from the recent budget, there was a little bit of changes that happened to the program that we also wanted to share with folks. For example, the annual award to students have been increased to $4,500 from $3,000 in the last year. And again, as I mentioned, the eligibility is now open to those California DREAM Act applicants who also met criteria for Cal Grant B. So they no longer need to have just received Cal Grant B. They also just, if they received Cal Grant A, but they met eligibility for B, they are also able to apply for DSIG now. They also took the cap off for the proration rate off for part-time students. So if students are also only attending school part-time, they are now eligible to participate. And because of this increase in the award rate, they did reduce the number of participants to 1,667, but the funding has increased per student at this point. And a thing to note also is that any funds not awarded to students for DSIG this year will actually be transferred to the California Dream Loan, which could be a good thing, but we do also want to make sure that these funds were intended for undocumented students to use for like paid professional development. And so we want to make sure that the funds are like serving that and not necessarily showing up as loans that students need to borrow and then have to pay back. And so I'll kind of take a quick pause there. Thank you to all of those who also took the time to introduce themselves in the chat. And then you'll see that that one-page flyer for DSIG that I showed in a couple of slides ago is in the chat as well. But I wanted to see if there's any questions for the moment on anything that has been covered. And then if not, we'll move on kind of to our next couple of slides. Or any comments for people. Yeah, I see Luce, you have your hand raised.
Can you drop the link of the list of organizations that students are eligible to use? Yes. And also, will you be going over if there's any way possible for organizations to become part of this list? Or
yeah, so Nancy can drop that link. It is also all of this information is available in the CSAC website, csac.ca.gov/DSIG. So you can check there, but we'll drop it on the chat right now. And then just as I mentioned, this service organization registration that's also linked here that we can drop in the chat. That's how people, that's how organizations can get on this list if they're not already. But if you're from a school, your school is providing like California DREAM Act awards to students, you will most likely already be on this list. And then I see that there's a question around, can students work off campus with DSIG? Yeah, so yes, students are also able to volunteer with off-campus organizations. So any community organizations, hopefully some of our panelists can give an example of this if they have that. But yes, they don't have to be limited to just volunteering or doing community service with an on-campus department. So if they're already doing that, they can use some of those hours to meet the DSIG requirements. Okay, so maybe we can take we'll take one last question and then we'll move on. So Alex?
Hi, I just wanted to clarify, students can also volunteer on campus? You said, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So this is both for like any on-campus departments, including Dream Resource Centers, financial aid, anybody like that. And then they can also choose if they're working with another off-campus organization. I think the first one that came to my head is like Cheerla in Los Angeles, for example. They are also able to use those hours for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then I see another question with Rosa.
Yes, so students need to complete 150 hours for the whole semester or for the whole academic year.
The whole academic year, yeah.
Okay, so they can work 75 hours in fall and 75 in the spring, and then when do they receive the award?
Yeah, so this is a requirement of it is they do have to complete the whole number of hours, 50 hours for the semester, 100 hours per quarter in order to file this payment request form to get their payment.
Okay, so if they do the 150 hours on the first semester, will they receive the money at that time, or they have to wait until the end of the academic year?
I think after they have completed their hours, they submit this form and the process will start for them to receive their grant.
Excellent. And you say these are students that have no DACA, so they have no Social Security or anything like that, and they can actually work on campus. And then the money will come from the application they submit, not from us.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily work in the sense of like work with those for who have like work authorization through DACA. So the way that you'll see a lot of the messaging for this is it's like volunteer or they're performing community service hours. And so that's how it's intended to be used for. So they're not necessarily working on campus. They're more like volunteering, as Christina mentioned on the chat. But they will be receiving this grant after completing those hours for those.
And how much is the grant? I didn't catch the amount of the grant.
So it's right here listed, and I believe Nancy also maybe have put stuff in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this link we can throw in the chat again so folks can see that.
Okay, excellent. This is really, really helpful because we do have students that they don't have DACA, and unfortunately we cannot hire them. But if they can go do some community service or volunteer on campus, then they will be able to apply.
Yes, yeah, yes, for community service, yeah. And it is being disbursed through their financial aid, for example. So unfortunately, students do need to make sure that they have this sufficient unmet financial need in order to receive the award. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions too. And there's a couple of like clarifying things in the chat that folks can also check out. So just for the interest of time, I see that there's another question right now. I'll ask Yesenia for you to hold your question or put it in the chat, just so we can address what we're going through. And then I'll find a way to kind of weave back your question if we're able to with that too. And so hopefully, so with all of that, right, this is a really great opportunity for undocumented students to be able to get that professional development experience and also get some payment for that time too, especially if they are not eligible for DACA. And we do want to make sure that folks are able to also promote this on their campus, not even just to students, but also to other departments, to your Undocumented Ally Task Force, to other community organizations that you're a part of, so they can students actually have a place to volunteer for, right? And so we want to also just share some strategies to promote to people. CSAC has a lot of great resources on their website. They actually have this social media toolkit that we can throw in the chat that you can use to promote through social media. There's that great flyer I showed that's for students. There's also a flyer for financial aid administrators and community organizations on what they should know about DSIG. So those are also really great things to share with other staff and educators and other community members so that they know about this opportunity that they can open up to students potentially in your community. There's also these other flyers that CSAC has that we have linked here. And then we do really recommend that you partner up if you're not part of financial aid or you don't have relationships with financial aid yet, but you partner up with financial aid departments to identify and outreach to students who meet requirements for DSIG. There's a lot of, it's not uncommon, right, for students not to know about different resources available for them. So make sure that this information is actually reaching your students. And then again, just making sure that they are aware of these organizations that that's able to, that they're able to do their volunteer for. And so looking at that qualifying organizations list, or making sure that your organization or other things that's not listed on there is already listed. And we'll also share this really great flyer that we created here at Immigrants Rising to kind of help promote the word out and share some of these outreach strategies. And then, so with all of that information, I do know that folks here have also started to kind of use and promote DSIG, and last year it is still a relatively new program. So we do want to hear a little bit of your experience with it. If there are already common challenges that's coming up for you, we ask you to let us know about that by voting on this poll in your screen. I'm going to launch that right now. And if you could just pick your top 3, there's a couple listed on here. All right, hold on. Let me see if and let me know, can you see the poll?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so take a minute or 2 to vote on that, and then we'll kind of see what is coming up. So I'll wait for more people to participate in that. I'll wait until we reach like 75% completion. We're like at 64. So if you haven't completed it yet. Just a couple more folks. Okay. So get your final votes in if you have not voted yet. Okay. If not, let me end the poll right here and then share the results. So you're able to see the results, right? As you can see, the largest challenge that folks have named in this poll, at least, is that students are unaware of this opportunity. That has like a 78% vote. And then I also see that the other challenges and clarity about the financial aid disbursement process, which I think is actually has come up as a question already. And the one after that is, I think the one after that is the one of lack of eligible students. Yeah. And I see like there's a couple of others. One of the others named is students who do not have a work permit or social security are unable to work for our campus departments at this time. So that's a good thing to bring up. Thank you, Arcelia, for naming that. Okay, so I do thank you all for participating in this poll. I do think that some of our panelists for today, as we transition into that portion, right, should hopefully address some of these things, especially the ones about students being unaware of this opportunity, right, and maybe potentially the lack of eligible students, because we can have this really great program, but how can we make sure that it's actually being beneficial to our students, right? And then hopefully maybe we can even address the unclarity about the financial aid disbursement process, but if not, this is just the beginning of this conversation, and hopefully we can provide more resources and spaces for us to dive deeper into that. Okay, so with that all, I will transition us. Let me stop sharing these polls. With all of that, I do want to transition us to our promising practice panel. And so I'm going to be welcoming 3 folks. One person will actually be on video because unfortunately they could not join us at this time today. But I'll be welcoming Josefina Espino from CSU San Marcos. Fidelia Flores will be from Oxnard College, will be joining us from we'll have a recorded portion for it. And then Marisela Hernandez from the Foundation of the California Community College and Katrina Linden from the Campaign for College Opportunity. They all introduced themselves earlier today, but they'll be part of our panel today to just talk a little bit about their promising practice or resource that has supported students in applying and participating in DSIG. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and also ask Nancy to help kind of like pin folks who are in the panel to get us started. And then I think everybody is here. So I will, I'll start with just a question for everyone to just share with us a little bit about your promising practice or resource that supports students in participating DSIG. And then I'm actually gonna have Fina go ahead and join us, go ahead and share with us first.
Yeah, of course. So I didn't prepare a slide. I do have a slide with my contact info that I can share. Would you like me to do that?
We can share your contact information afterwards. So if it's just you talking, that's even better.
Okay, perfect. So when this program first came out last year, we were super excited because we always get students who are looking for opportunities, that come with financial compensation. And 90% of our students on our campus don't have work authorization. So that's a really big challenge. So when this program came out, we were super excited. We were able to enroll 3 students in the program last year, and they're actually continuing with us again. So they reapplied for this year. And all 3 of them did their work in our office. My office space is super small, so it's like a little closet. So I don't have a lot of space for student workers, but I was able to connect with our student centers on campus so that they can be like the liaison between the Dream Center and their space. And that's how they've been doing their volunteer hours. So they check in with me regularly, but they do a lot of the hours in that space, which has been really nice because they actually get to share about the Dreamer Resource Office with other students on campus. This academic year, we have about 15 students on the program, which has been a little bit difficult to manage because I'm a staff of 1. But again, I was able to connect with different departments on campus, so student health and counseling, onboarding, Project Rebound, the library, and again, the student centers to place these students. And then I was also able to place some of the students at their high schools that they came from in their AVID programs where they're doing tutoring and other things. And then I have 2 students who actually were able to be placed at their parents' job. So their parents have work authorization, but the job is a nonprofit. So they were able to work out an agreement to get the hours done there. And it's, and I apologize for my voice. I have COVID this week, so I'm at home with COVID. But yeah, and then tracking the hours has been super simple. The program does offer a really simple time log that they can keep track of their hours. They just actually put the date, the number of hours they did for the day, what they worked on for the day, and then the supervisor signs off on it. We created our own timesheet for the Dreamer Resource Office just because it's easier for me to keep track of all of them. And I can share that with you all too. It's on Excel and it actually adds up all the hours, make sure that they're completing them. And I have students who do like a little bit of hours during the week because they have a heavy schedule. And then I have some who just want to get all of the hours done at the very beginning of the semester. So they'll work the full 20 hours, not work, I'm sorry, they'll volunteer 20 hours until they complete the 150. And as soon as they complete it, we send in the payment request form. And it does take, 3 to 6 weeks for them to get their payment. The payment is sent as a check to the financial aid office. So the student actually has to go down to the student accounts office, sign the check, and then this check can be deposited into financial aid, and then it gets reimbursed as a scholarship to them. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Fina. And then just one question before we move on to our next person. I'm wondering how you were able to grow. Last year you said you had 3 students participate, and then now you have 15, which is a really big growth, and congratulations on having that. And I know that's up to all the great work that you're doing, but how have you been able to let students know about this opportunity on your campus?
So we have a weekly newsletter, and so we promote it heavily on our newsletter when the renewal was going to come up. So right before July 1st, we started to promote it. And then I think really the students who participated last year were able to share their stories with other students at Dreamer Welcome Day. So a lot of the new ones are actually incoming freshmen that were trying to find a way to pay for college or were really concerned about not being able to work. And so that's how we were able to get quite a few new applicants.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do think since, we saw that the biggest challenge, right, for folks right now is students not being aware of the opportunities. I've heard other schools also do like workshops, right, like specific workshops around DSIG, but then it sounds like you also have really tapped into your students and your student, not workers, but your student volunteers to help get a lot of that word out. And it's great that folks who are coming into your campus for the first time, mostly students who I'm sure are very confused about how to like earn money and like get, professional development for the first time in college, are able to know about this program and hopefully are able to grow it in the next year, as long as it continues to exist or there's a need for it too.
Yeah, and the really great thing is that they're also gaining skills and they have stuff that they could add to their resume because they work on a variety of different projects, and it's really cool to see them develop.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Fina. Okay, so we'll come back to you with a wrap-up question for that. Thank you for all that you shared. I'm sure that has been also like helping, hopefully it's helping kind of turn ideas and wheels for other people who's hearing about, who's kind of still developing their outreach plan for DSIG, right? I'm actually gonna pull up this video right now that we have from Fidelia Flores, who is the financial aid specialist at Oxnard College, to kind of talk a little bit more about how she actually supports students in applying, like doing the application itself for DSIG. So let me pull that up. Let me just make sure the sound is shared. Oh. Sound is good.
What we did is I took screenshots of each section because there's a total of 4 sections on this form. So I just told them, okay, section 1 is specifically your information. And I told them to make sure that their information has to match exactly how their California Dream Act application matched. So then I had them log into their web
Sorry about that. I'm just expanding it.
account for them to understand what is a CSAC ID, and made them verify that everything matched on their application. So once everything was completed on section 1, then I had the students send me the form so I can certify section 2. And then I told the student that if they would like to go on their own to get the section 3 completed, then they're more than welcome to. But if they needed myself to go walk with them, then I did. So I would walk with the student and introduce the director or supervisor of the department. It's like, hey, remember I spoke to you about this new opportunity. So this is so-and-so. They're interested in doing volunteer hours at your department. We just need your signature for the student to send this form out to CSAC. So then I make sure that everything was completed, and then I also let the supervisor know that if in case that they were out on vacation or on leave, that if they knew anybody else that can certify also their hours, if they knew someone else, so they had someone else also sign that off, just in case if that were to be the case for the student. So a lot of them did have a second signature, so then they'll be able to certify their hours. And then for section 4, I told the student, okay, you want to make sure you read, you understand that in order for you to qualify for this grant, you have to make sure that you to qualify for Cal Grant B, you do the hours and then make sure that it's signed and dated. And I know our students, so I told the students that I'll be sending their application, because if they don't send them, they're never going to send the application to CSAC. So I went ahead and submitted the CSAC application on their behalf, and I made sure that to CC them so that they knew that application was sent to CSAC. So that was one of the ways that myself and my colleague Ruth assisted the students complete the application.
Okay, yeah, so you can also see from Fidelia's quick presentation right there that the application itself is a little bit involved, not super involved, right? But there's 4 parts to it. It can be confusing a little bit for students to do that application themselves. And so she, as a financial aid specialist with their close relationship to their Dream Resource Center in Oxnard, do take the time to kind of walk students through this, in addition to doing some of those financial aid workshops and just those outreach that they do at Oxnard College to make sure that students not only are aware of this opportunity, but once they do know that there's support there for them in order to complete the application. And that presentation was given earlier last year. So the application has been updated to this point to make sure that Cal Grant A students who meet eligibility for B are eligible for it now too. And so let me also just take a quick look at the chat to see if there's anything, if there's anything else on the chat. Okay, I think it has been, it has been addressed. It does look like DSIG approval is taking about 1 to 2 weeks in order to get approved. And so I'll move us over to our last panelists, Marisela and Katrina, to kind of go over their resource to support students in this.
Katrina, are you?
Oh, great. Yeah, I can kick us off. Yeah, thank you all for inviting us to this space. It was great to hear about from our practitioners on how they're implementing this important policy. I think want to also thank Madeline for just your overview of the program. And from the questions in the group, it sounds like there's still a lot of work for us to do in spreading awareness about this really amazing opportunity for undocumented students to have the ability to perform meaningful community service in return for grant aid that will really be vital as they're attempting to build professional skills and contribute to their community. So I'm really excited to share about what the coalition is working on and what our partners are really seeing in the field as far as challenges with implementation of this program. I think as Madeline mentioned earlier, there's over 2,000 spots for the DSIG program, which will be reduced as the grant increases. But unfortunately, across all 3 systems, public higher ed systems, we've seen really low uptake of the DSIG program due to a combination of things. One really being a lack of understanding of what counts as community service, what service they're able to perform, but then also challenges in being requested to complete a background check in order to access the DSIG program, which can be very scary for undocumented students who might not feel comfortable with providing personal information to either the state or federal government, which as we know can be a very serious privacy concern. So as a result of conversations that we've been having with our practitioners, with partners over the past year or so, it really came, this document came out of those conversations as a need for us to really outline and just provide information at the very minimum of what it means to get a background check in California. So this comprehensive document is about 7 pages long. It's just like a lot of frequently asked questions that we believe that will be helpful to understand before making the decision to conduct a background check to access the DSIG program. So if Marisela can scroll through, it kind of provides just a basic, like what is a live scan? What is fingerprinting? What is a background check? Kind of breaking down these different confusing terminologies and things that I learned a lot in researching and putting this document together myself. And just like letting students know who they can go to on their campus to learn more, how much this even costs, how much money you're gonna have to put up front in order to get a background check. So background checks are just like a minor piece of the DSIG program. Not every program requires it. It's really up to the organization that you're trying to work, conduct service with, but we recognize that this is a challenge that some folks are encountering, even on their college campuses, with campus HR departments requiring students to conduct background checks, which is not required at all in DSIG, but is something that individual campuses are implementing. So I think that kind of encompasses what this document, where this document came out of. And I'll let Marisela contribute as well and share her thoughts on this, but also wanted to share before I pass it to Marisela, I'm part of a working group with the California Student Aid Commission, where they're thinking about these problems. What are the challenges with DSIG implementation? And they're talking to practitioners on the ground and try to figure out how we can implement this more evenly across campuses, how we can provide the information students need to access DSIG, and how we can inform you all as practitioners to feel empowered to share this program with students and help them navigate it and receive grant aid. So this is just a quick overview, but Marisela, I want to see what other what else you'd like to add to this.
Thank you, Katrina. So the one thing that I will add is that I want to thank all the folks who spoke up about some of the barriers that they're facing with implementation, because that's really how this document came along, right? Us that we're doing this work at the statewide level, sometimes it's hard to know like what's going on in the local colleges. So I'm going to encourage you all to continue, recording like what's going on. What are some of the barriers? I know that somebody mentioned that the application process is difficult. What are some of the suggestions that you all have for CSAC? I think something that I learned, working in, through this partnership is that CSAC is very open to feedback. But as you know, it's a new program for all of us. I think all of us are learning, all of us are trying to figure it out. How can we best support you all to, bring you resources that will make it easier for you to implement, and then also to make it easier for students to access this information. The one thing that I will also mention is that just to be clear, so the DSIG program does not require a background check. So that's the main reason why we created this FAQ, because there was a lot of questions about background checks. So just to be clear, DSIG does not require. However, if your student is volunteering in, for example, like schools or spaces where there is minors, they may be required to complete a background check, but that's a requirement of the organization that the student is volunteering at, not DSIG. Also, just so you all know, a lot of our colleges, because I know a lot of our students are volunteering in the different departments in our colleges. Just to be clear, a lot of our colleges do require a background check, and a lot of those background checks are being housed or are being done in police departments and HR departments. So as we all know, this community is very aware, right? Like the students are scared. They don't want to walk into those offices. They don't want to have any interaction with police departments. So as a promise in practices for you all, especially as we implement this, is there anything that you could do to support your student, right? Can you walk? Sometimes it just takes you walking your student and asking the questions yourself to the police department, right? Or the HR department. And also, how can you work with those departments to address some of the barriers that your students are facing? So this is the main reason why this background check document was created. As Katrina mentioned, we were hoping to have it ready for you all today, but as you could see, it's a lot of information that we have gotten triple checked by different immigration attorneys, by different practitioners and different experts in the field. So we will have it ready for you, in the upcoming days. We try to do it for today, but we'll get it to you. It's a very important document, and that we hope that it's a working document and that it's not legal advice at all. Like what we did is we went into different websites, we collected the data for you and put it in one document. But again, it's a working document. So if there's anything that you see missing or questions that are coming up as you continue to advocate for your students, please let us know, because that's what we're here for, to support you in the implementation and to make it easier on all of you and your students to be able to implement the program. So I hope that, this information is helpful to you, and then we'll get this document to Nancy as soon as it's done. I'm Nancy and Madeline to share with you all the people that will register and participated in this roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marisela, and also to you both, to you and Katrina, right, for just bringing this important document on here and opening up that conversation about background checks too, because while it's not required with the program, unfortunately, people and other organizations do still ask for it. And so how do we make sure that that's not a barrier for our students? And I think something that somebody brought up in the chat as well, to just make sure that you yourself, as you promote this and organizations for students to volunteer with, to kind of learn a little bit more, what is their process for onboarding volunteers, right? Will it require a background check? Do they have to fill out some sort of program agreement? Those kinds of things, right? And kind of helping guide students a little bit through that. It's an extra step, unfortunately. But making sure that students actually, once they've like learned about the opportunity, right, how do we make sure that they're also in the actually get to volunteer in that organization or department? And I know Arcelia put this really great question in the chat around how can we work with our districts to allow our students to work on campus or to even volunteer on campus, right? Because again, this is not work to volunteer on campus and not require a background check. I do feel like maybe that's a longer conversation in general, and maybe a bigger push, not just for, you know, your district, but other potential districts and campus that's going through this problem. But yeah, I'm wondering, you know, Marisela or Katrina, if there's any quick answer to that question that you can give right now, or other advocacy that you all are doing around that.
I would say your advisory committee or your task force on campus will have a huge say on what's and advocating for promising practices, and just sometimes it's almost like information knowledge, right? Like sometimes departments have been doing this for years and they're not aware of some of the barriers their students are facing. So I think that, you know, having this conversation in your advisory committees will be really helpful. And as we continue to learn, we'll share more information. But I think as of right now, we're still in, you know, everybody's having conversation around, and then we're trying to, gather some of those promising practices for you all.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And I see there's also a couple of comments in the chat. Jose from Long Beach College and Fina, who just shared with us from CSU San Marcos, do work together with their HR and UPD, University Police Department, respectively, to kind of learn a little bit more of the processes for those background checks to make sure that it is friendly to the undocumented students that they serve. So I think it's also kind of like approaching, like training those folks, right? Like in the same way that we do undocu-ally trainings, like training those folks and learning more about their process and seeing if there is even a way to like move the process so that it's no longer required to do some of these like background checks if the DSIG program is not requiring them themselves. Okay, so I do see like a couple of hands raised. I don't think we have time for both of your questions, but feel free to maybe put them in the chat to see if we can address them.
Sorry.
Yes.
Madeline, mine is not
Yes.
a question, it's just a follow-up on that conversation.
Go ahead.
So our campus is starting our fellowship program this semester. And that was a question that we had, if the students were going to be completing this fellowship on campus, will they have to do a background check? The answer was no, right? Because to be an employee, you do have to have a background check. But to volunteer, right? Because we're hiring, these are not really working, they're going to be volunteering. And for volunteers, they don't require a background check. It's just a liability form stating that they're going to be volunteering on campus. So again, because they're not going to be employed, the background check requirement was waived, and it was just having that volunteer form for our liability purposes.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Tanya, for sharing that, right? That's a really good distinction too, right? Like, do your HRs, do your police departments, whoever does the background checks on your campus, understand that this is not necessary. This is not like these students are not working on your campus, for example, they're volunteering. And so is the process kind of different for them? Is there really a need for that background check, or is it like the liability forms that Tanya mentioned that is needed for your campus? Yeah, so thank you for sharing that, Tanya. And I see that there's a couple of, other questions coming up, other things coming up in the chat. If we didn't get a chance to kind of get to your question, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll find a way to address it. later in the space or even like outside the space, right? As Marisela mentioned, DSIG is a super new program and we're still learning a lot about the actual implementation of it. So how can we uplift some of these experiences of our students and of our campuses to make sure that it's actually serving its intended purpose too. And so I do want to give a big thanks and appreciations to Fina, to Fidelia, who couldn't join us today, Marisela and Katrina for just sharing a little bit more about their promising practice and the resource that can support students in making sure that they are actually completing and able to get this DSIG money and able to participate in this DSIG experience. We will be sharing all of their contact information. So if there's other questions coming up for you that wasn't addressed, and I'm sure there's many, feel free to reach out to them. But we do want to transition now to just for you all to like check in with each other and hear, kind of like reflect and talk amongst each other about what you heard in today's presentation and in today's panel, and what's kind of coming up and what is a possibility for you all in your campus. And so in like a couple of seconds, we are going to be transitioning into our Creating Collective Solutions breakout rooms. We'll put these questions in the chat, but we do want you to kind of check in with your folks in your room to kind of, given all of that you heard today, how can you use some of this to address some of the challenges your campus is facing? Or is there like other things, other next steps coming up for you just from what you heard today? You can share a little bit about what resonated with you from the panel or from the questions that were asked, and what will you actually take back to your campus? And so we'll do, if there's no questions around the breakout room, we will transition into that, and we'll give maybe about like 10, 12 minutes for folks to kind of chat a little bit, and then we'll come back and do a report back of just what came up for you in your group. So Nancy, are we ready to open those groups up? For participating that, I hope that was a good conversation with people and you got a chance to, reflect a little bit on what you heard today, or at least even just share, some of the challenges coming up for you all, or some of the solutions that people are kind of exploring in their own campuses. I do want to hear back. We do want to hear back kind of what happened in your breakout room. So can I have somebody, I want to hear back from folks. Is there somebody who'd like to share what happened in their breakout room? Great, Luz, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hi, I actually got some really great insight from Vincent. He was sharing with me that he works under the financial aid department. So going above and beyond, helping these students out. And I think one of the biggest takeaway I took away from what he said is that, the students have like the 300 hours that they can complete. And he was saying that they can complete it like within, it doesn't have to be 150 one semester, 150 the second semester. It can be like completed if they for some reason completed it all within, by January or December, and it's still in the same semester. Like you can, as soon as the student completes the 150, you can like submit that form for payment request. And I was like, wow, okay, I didn't know that. So now I know that. But yeah, that was a really good insight from Vincent, and I really appreciated the breakout room.
Great, thank you, Luz. Yeah, that's great. And another really great point, right, is like, it's really important to have financial aid connections and collaborations to make sure DSIG is successful on your campus, since the process to do the payment and all of that does go through financial aid. So how can, if there's not already those engagements with financial aid, how can we build those and make sure that that support is available to students? So that extra support that we saw with Fidelia in her presentation, and that we heard from this breakout room too. Great. I'll take Rosa, go ahead.
Yeah, we talk about, how can we collaborate with other departments on campus that we can offer this opportunity, because the person from Bakersfield, he mentioned that, they wanted to do that, but it's still they haven't got that collaboration. I think we need to be more proactive and really focus into those departments. Usually what I do with my surveys, I check to see what are the highest numbers of majors. And then when I see the majors, then I really go up to that department, talk to the chair and says, I really need to support a lot of our students are in your department, and then hopefully that way we can start building the collaboration, because I think that a lot of times we take for granted the opportunities that can be on campus. We also talked, Chris brought a good idea about doing some kind of a symposium with the UC, the CSU, and community college about Dreamers. I know the UC Berkeley does one symposium, but I say that's Northern California. We can do one in Southern California. And I told Chris, yeah, definitely we want to do that. And I would love to, be part of the organization of that symposium, because I think that a lot of time we can learn from each other, and what is working in one campus, we can try it and see my work with our campus too. And it doesn't matter if it's the UC or the CSU or the community college. So it was a great conversations that we had. And so hopefully from this, something comes. I definitely going to promote this opportunity, because I don't think that it's promoted that much. And I have one benefit that I have one advisor from financial aid that comes to my center Tuesdays and Thursday every week. And so I'm going to offer her to do a presentation, because they're the ones that they're going to be awarding this money. And so that way, students sometimes have answers that I might not be able to answer. And so that's one of my goals. I just put it in my notes. Okay, Cynthia needs to do a presentation. So that's another thing that we talk about it.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, right? Like how do we build this like department, like connections, collaboration, so that students are able to volunteer in different departments on campus to actually take advantage of DSIG and like make sure that financial aid connection already exists on there, right? And I'm glad, it already sounds like there's also some cross-campus things that kind of got brought up in the group, and how can cross-campus collaborations also help kind of strengthen and promote more of these resources for undocumented students in a region, because students also transfer. They don't always just stay in one college, right? They transfer within different ones, and it's great to kind of know what's out there beyond what's on your campus too. And I also want to uplift what Fina brought up earlier on how some of her students are working at their parents' workplaces and nonprofits. So what are other creative creative ways like that, right? To make sure that there's volunteer organizations for your students to do DSIG. Juliana, I see your hands up.
So I had a question regarding the age, the cap age of 28. Right now with SB 68, we're seeing our numbers are increasing a little bit with our undocumented students that are coming in and continuing their education. For a student that it's older the age of 28, and they're in community college and want to apply for, would they be eligible for DSIG?
Nancy, do you have an answer to this question?
Well, I'll jump in and then see if others as well. Like right now, the way that the law stands, if you are over 28, you're not able to have eligibility for the Cal Grant program. So if you can't have Cal Grant eligibility, then you wouldn't be able to have DSIG. There is Cal Grant reform underway, and my understanding, but don't quote me, is that they're hoping to try to take away that age limit for the Cal Grants, but that won't take place for in another year or two. So right now, unfortunately, it's only individuals that have Cal Grant eligibility. So they would have to try to get hooked up with some other kind of fellowship opportunity on their campus that would not have an age limit in order to be able to get the same kind of professional development opportunities.
Thank you.
If anybody else wants to jump in, please do.
Yeah, is there any other answers or comments about that question from anybody else? If not, and if the answer is not coming to you right now, but you do have something that you'd like to answer, maybe we can follow up. I don't know, Juliana, if you'd like to share your email in the chat. But yeah, I do think that all these, the DSIG program is really great. It's still new though, right? And it's still attached to Cal Grants, which have its own eligibility requirements that's not open to all students. So it is not a solution for everybody. It's, I think, a step in the right direction. But yeah, again, how can we kind of like uplift some of these experiences and challenges, like with SB 68 opening up the door for more older students? This is not an opportunity for them necessarily. How can we like document some of those and kind of help inform the advocacy pushes that happen in the future too? And hopefully the Cal Grant reform also, comes through and we can kind of address that problem with that. But Nancy, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just the other part that I wanted to put in is I've been doing some research with the data from the California Student Aid Commission for Cal Dream Act awards, and they're actually very low, like across the state. We don't have as many students applying as we need to, and we don't have as many students actually getting award and paving out the grants. So we're going to be having some boot camps throughout the year. And I know that all of you are already doing work to try to increase the application and award rates, but that's also going to allow more students to be able to participate in DSIG moving forward.
Yeah. Well, with that information too, I know we are getting closer to the end of our time together. Thank you again all to everybody who participated in the breakout rooms, who jumped into today's session, and lots of great appreciations to our panelists, Marisela, Katrina, Fina, and Fidelia this morning for sharing all that they did. I do get a sense that there's some great conversations that happen in your breakout rooms. And so those are more of the things you can expect as we move forward with these promising practice roundtable and get a chance to, I saw a really great comment on the chat about not having to reinvent the wheel, but kind of seeing what other great, amazing work colleges and universities are doing out there to support their students, and how can you learn some of that and take some of that back on your campus. And so I'm going to be closing out our space right now. So we just have a couple of announcements, and I will also pull up our panelists' contact information so people can take a screenshot of that, but we will be doing a follow-up email with the recording, any materials, and this PowerPoint with contact information, so you can also look out for that email. But our next Promising Practice Roundtable is going to be happening on October 13th. We can throw the link in the chat right now. Again, it's going to be happening every second Thursday of every month. And next month, we're going to be looking at educator essentials for Undocumented success. We have our newest educational resource finder that we do every year at Immigrants Rising. So we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into that, and actually what kind of resources are going to be helpful to undocumented student personnel, or even to folks supporting undocumented students on your campus, and how can you maximize the usage of our educational binder a little bit more. And then just lastly, again, here is, we're all about building cross-campus collaborations at Immigrants Rising, right? So I do want to share the contact information of our panelists. I know that they have a lot more to say about the topics that they kind of touched on a little bit today. And so please reach out to any of them, or please reach out to me or Nancy about anything you have questions about DSIG. We do want to kind of learn a little bit more about folks' experiences with it, and how do we uplift that and kind of advocate a little bit more so that the program is more accessible to our students. And if you also have a promising practice around DSIG that you're super excited about, please feel free to also reach that back out to us so we can share that. I see a couple of people already also did that in the chat, so we can also uplift a little bit more of that too. Nancy, any last words you also want to share?
Just, we're super excited that all of you came today. It's great to be here in a statewide space, and we look forward. Please invite your colleagues, others next time, because we've learned so much today from each of you, and we want to just continue spreading the love and the knowledge. Thanks to all of you for all you do.
Great, thank you all. We're sending you off to have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next month. Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you for coming. Great to see your faces, your names, your schools, all that you're up to.